Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I put together some of my absolute favorite fall DIYs from the past. These are so rustic and so fun. I know you're going to love them. Hey, if you love this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my content, hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified anytime I post a new video. All right, let's get started with these fall DIYs.
First DIY, I'm going to use these wood planks that I got from the Dollar Tree, and they have a little pumpkin cut out at the top. Now, if you missed my Dollar Tree fall haul video, I will have it linked in the description box below, but you're definitely going to want to check it out to see what other brand new items I found this year for the fall season. After I removed the hangers from each one of my boards, I used one of the boards to measure the top, the cutout part of the other one. We need each one of our pieces to be the same height, so you need to make sure that you measure against each other. Then after that, I took a knife and I'm just going to score it multiple times on my line and bend it back and forth until I'm able to snap it. Now, I did go ahead and use a ruler to make sure that I was cutting a straight line. After I broke it in two pieces, I took my sanding block and I sanded each one down to make sure the ends were nice and smooth. After that, I took my other long wooden plank and I used the part that I cut off at the top to measure the top of that one. Now, the reason why I have it upside down is because I know that's a straight line, so I wanted to go ahead and trace that. Then I did the same thing and just scored it with my knife multiple times until I was able to break that one off as well. After I broke it apart, I cleaned up my edges, and again I took my sanding block and sanded both of them down. Next, it was time to put this all together. So what I did was I laid one of the longer pieces down, and then by using wood glue and hot glue, I glued the shorter piece along the side of the longer piece. Now, we're making a box, so you need to make sure to glue this little piece, the cutout piece, on its side so that the pumpkin is sideways and not straight up and down. I'm just deciding to put it all together on its side, which you'll see here. So after I do that side, I move to the other and I do the same thing. I use a combination of wood glue and hot glue to glue my sides down. Now, I did have to hold each side down after applying the glue. That way it had time to set up and I would hold it in place. After both of my sides were glued, I just took my wood glue and ran a bead through the corner to go ahead and give it extra support. Then I used my finger to push it into the little grooves or any little gaps that there may have been. Next, I applied wood glue and hot glue on the top of those little pieces, and then I'm going to put that second long board on the top. Now you want to make sure that all of your edges and sides are all lined up and flush with each other. And again, you're going to have to hold this down until the glue sets up. To give my box even more support, I decided to glue these little wooden blocks on the inside of my boards. Now you can see that the top long board is bowed. It is curving outward, so I do something about that in just a little bit, and putting these blocks on do help a little, but I am gonna have to end up adding a bottom. But to do these blocks, I just glued one down to the top, one down to the bottom in every corner of my box. Now I do find that it is easier to flip my box on its side like that and start gluing all of the pieces, but of course you couldn't see it from that angle, so I went ahead and glued all my pieces. After that, I wanted to darken this box just a little bit. Personally, I'm not a fan of light wood. I like darker wood. So I just took my Waverly Antique Wax and a chippy brush, and I'm just going to dry brush that all over all the sides of my box. Now you do want to make sure to follow the pattern of the wood grain. So I'm going back and forth on this side, but on the sides, the smaller sides, I'll be going up and down because that's the way the wood grain is going. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new, thank you so much for choosing to stop by. And also, if you're coming over from Liz's channel, welcome, and I really hope that you love what you see today. If you're returning, thank you so much for all of your support. I've really been loving getting to all these DIYs and sharing them all with you. And stay tuned because fall and Halloween and Christmas are, of course, my favorites, so there's going to be a lot of content coming your way. Okay, so to fix the problem with the bowing board, I am going to add a bottom. So I took some leftover foam board that I had from a different DIY, and I'm tracing my box on top of that, and then I'm going to use my knife to cut it out. Now, as you saw, it did not cover the whole bottom, so I do end up having to piece a few of the pieces of foam board together, but that's okay because you're not going to see it, and the inside is going to be all filled anyways, so it doesn't have to look pretty, it just has to get the job done. Now, the trick to doing this is I had to hold the bowing piece tight to, you can see I'm really pushing it to make sure that it stops being bowed and that I'm gluing it as straight as possible. One way to avoid this is just to not use a board that is bowed. So if you do this project, just try to make sure to pick up 2 straight boards. I did not realize that when I bought them, or else I would have gotten a straight one. But, you know, this is just a good way to show you how you can fix things like this. And it was pretty easy to fix. I just had to make sure that I pushed it the side that was bowed very hard onto the foam board. That way it would glue straight onto the foam board, if that makes sense. So all I did was stick the foam board on the bottom, and this box is flipped upside down. So, and then I just ran a bead of hot glue, and then I'm going to push it down really hard. Now, I apologize about my angle. I did not realize I was a little cut off here, but that's basically all I did. I did it on both sides, and then you're going to see that I do take some little pieces of foam board and cover the rest of the bottom, and that's basically it. I'm just adding a ton of glue to make sure that my bottom stays in place. Next, I took this little stencil that I got from Dollar General and I cut out the word that I wanted to use, and then I poked out all of the little pieces that don't belong. And then by using some painter's tape, I did tape it down in the bottom right hand corner of my box. Now, the last time I used these stencils from Dollar General, they bled. So because I was nervous to do that again, what I did was traced them on with a pencil, and then I colored them in with a black Sharpie marker, and that worked really well. I was just afraid to use my paint again because there would be no way to fix that besides painting the entire box, and I did not want to do that. So I just took the safe route and traced and colored it in. Next, I decided to lightly sand over my word so that way the color wasn't such a bold black. It kind of dulled it down a little bit. After that, it was time to add some handles. So I took this nautical rope that I got from the Dollar Tree and I tied a knot on one end of the rope, and there are already holes on the sides of the board because this was supposed to hang. So I'm just using those holes as a guide to where I want to glue my knots. So what I did was I made one knot and then I glued it down over that hole, and then I decided how long I wanted my handle to be, and I made another knot to glue on the other hole and then cut off the excess rope. Now you do want to make sure to put a generous amount of hot glue or even a super glue like E6000 or that super glue from the Dollar Tree. That way it gives these handles an extra hold. After I got one side glued down, I took another piece of rope and I tied a knot on one end, and then I compared it to the handle I already had glued on, and then tied another knot and did the same thing and glued it to the other end of my box. Now that my box was built and ready to go, it was time to fill it. So I took these 3 mason jars that I already had on hand, and I was going to start putting florals in it, and then I decided that they needed to be raised up a little bit. So I took these wood pieces from the Crafter Square section to use as risers. Next, I did put some foam around, but it really wasn't to use as foam. It was just basically to fill empty spots. And next, I'm going to take some extra Dollar Tree bags, and we all know I have a ton of those, and I'm just going to fill in the spots around the jars so I don't have to use as many floral pieces. After that, it was time to start filling this in with florals. Now to do this, all I did was just pop the flowers or the leaves or whatever I'm using off of the stems. I didn't use any wire cutters or anything. I just popped them off and then I arranged them how I liked. Now this did take a little while for me to do, so we're just going to speed that right up. Then in the jars itself, I am going to put little fake tea lights, the battery operated ones from the Dollar Tree. And now I have a super cute fall centerpiece that my mom is actually going to put on her dining room table. Now the neat thing is because this says blessed, you could really fill this all season long with the seasonal florals. So you could do sunflowers, you can do poinsettias or kind of Christmassy florals, you can do spring ones, summer, anything that you love. And I absolutely love how this box came out. It was super easy to make, and I love that I got to use 2 of the new wood planks from the Dollar Tree. What do you think? Hey friends, did you hear the news? I started a second YouTube channel called Life with Ash. Here is where you'll find a lot of content about home, lifestyle, and mom life. We'll be taking a look into birthday parties, holidays, some mama magic, also cleaning, organizing, decluttering, room makeovers, and everything in between. It is a no judgment zone. I usually have my hair in a messy bun. I live in leggings. My personal scent is spit up and poop, and I most likely am not wearing any makeup ever. So if you can relate to any of that at all, I would love for you to join me on my other channel. The link is provided for you down in the description box below, and let's take a look kind of deeper into my life. I'm going to use this mini cutting board that I got from Michael's. Now it was on sale for like 70% off, so I got a great deal. Now because the front of it is actually like wood burned in and raised, I was not able to just paint over it. So I flipped it around to the back, and the first thing I'm going to do is take a baby wipe and dip that in some Waverly Antique Wax and use that to faux stain the back and the sides of my cutting board. Next, I took my chippy brush and I dipped it in some ivory chalk paint, and I'm going to dry brush that all over my cutting board. Then to blend everything all together, I took my sanding sponge and sanded my cutting board down really well. After that, I took 4 regular size craft sticks, and I'm lining it up because I want to make a little board in the middle. So after I had them all lined up how I liked, I went ahead and took a smaller craft stick, and I'm going to hot glue that across the big ones to help them all attach together. Now I did start off with 4 craft sticks, but you're going to see that I actually add a 5th one because I wanted it to be just a little bit wider. But before I realized I wanted to do that, I just used that other craft stick to draw a straight line, and then I used my scissors to cut off the rounded parts. This is your friendly reminder to please give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving my content and that you want to see more. So hit that like button for even more DIY inspiration. After I had the ends cut down on one side, I flipped it over and did the same thing on the other. Basically, I'm just cutting this down so all of the rounded edges were cut off. Next, I took my sanding block and I'm going to sand all of the edges so they're nice and smooth. Next, I took my Waverly Antique wax again and my chippy brush, and I just dry brushed that on that little board that I made. Now, I wanted the natural wood to come through as well, so that's why I didn't really go heavy on the Waverly wax, but I just wanted a little bit of dimension and distressing. Then to help it all blend in, I went ahead and sanded it down. Now before I glued my wood piece onto my cutting board, I took these words that I also cut out from my Cricut and I weeded them, and then I used transfer tape to go ahead and apply them to my board. Again, this was super easy to do. This was only my second cut, so I thought for that matter, this actually came out pretty cute. One thing I really loved about this was in the Cricut, it literally told me which color to put in. So it would say cut number 1, and then it'll show me what the cut is going to be, so I could decide which one of my colors I wanted to put on. Now, I got these images from Cricut Design Space, and I really loved using these. But you do have to pay a membership fee, but I'm telling you, it was totally worth it because I already see so many different projects that I could make in the future by using that service. Again, this video is not sponsored by Cricut. I am not getting paid to do this or receiving any kind of free products. I am just sharing my experience as a newbie Cricut user, just in case you're sitting there on the fence and considering getting a Cricut. I'm telling you, it's really not as hard as people think, and I don't know why I was so intimidated, but as you can see, this part is super easy as well. So I just peeled it off, and then I just placed down all of my pieces on my board. Now I am looking at this image in the design space on my laptop, so I make sure that I place them in the right way because I'm such a visual person. I need to see what it looks like. So if you want to do that method, you can do that too. Super, super easy. After I had all my words placed down, I went ahead and hot glued my little board in the middle of my cutting board. Then I wanted to add a little bit more detail, so I took these little puffy stickers and I painted 4 of them with black acrylic paint. After they were dry, I hot glued 1 in each corner of my little wooden board. Lastly, I took some raffia and I tied it in a bow and I hot glued it to the bottom of the handle of my cutting board. I really love how this came out. I love all of the little details and the texture, and I love the fact that I got to use my Cricut one more time to make this little DIY. This really did not cost me a lot because, like I said, I got the actual cutting board from Michael's when it was on sale, so I'm so happy I got to use that as well. But I thought that this was a great decor piece. You can set it up in your kitchen or a dining area, or it does have the hanger on it still, so you could even hang it as well. So I really love how this came out, but what do you think? DIY, I'm going to start off by using this plastic tray that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to give it about 2.5 really good coats of ivory chalk paint. And when I say 2.5, what I mean is 2 full coats, and then just touch up any places that need some extra paint or may have gotten scratched or the paint came off. After it was dry, I took my ruler and I stuck it in the middle of my tray. I made a pencil mark on the top of my ruler and on the bottom, and then I moved my ruler up and down using the lines that I had previously drawn as my guide. So I'm going to make this look like shiplap lines, so I'm just going to go all the way down the middle of my tray. So I'm just going to work my way up and then my way down. I know it looks like that these lines are not straight, but they are, I promise. After that, I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to rub over each one of these lines to really give it that shiplap look. I've tried a lot of different methods, but this pencil method and then you rub it with your finger works the best for me. After that, I'm going to take this little chunky brush, and you know me, I love to make things look rustic. So I'm going to dry brush some Waverly Antique Wax all over this tray. I'm really going to pay attention to the edges around the tray and also the corners, because I want those to be a little darker and to highlight them a little bit more. After that, I'm going to take these 16 millimeter beads that I got from Amazon, and the link is in the description box below, and I am simply going to hot glue these all around the top part of my tray. Now, I'm making sure to glue the beads on so the holes of the beads are on the sides, and then what I'm doing is actually putting a line of glue down, and I'm also going to start putting a little dot of glue on the side of each bead so it connects to the one before it. So I am just going to go all the way around this tray. Now you can see that some of these beads are different colors. That's okay because we are actually going to paint those. So even though this DIY was so easy to do, it was a little time consuming. So just take your time. Glue all of your beads on, put on some music, a movie, watch something fun, a snack even maybe. But I'm just making sure that these are really glued down. After I had these all glued down, I even went in between the beads and just put a little dab of glue in each one of them in between. So here you can see that I'm just squirting a little dab of glue in between each one of those beads to give them a little extra support. So I'm just going to go around. After that, I took my ivory chalk paint again, and I am messily, if that makes sense, painting these beads. So I am not going for full coverage on these beads. I am just painting, but I'm doing a little bit more than dry brushing, if that makes sense. So I am going in with a smaller brush. The foam brush was just a little too big. So I'm going to go in with a smaller brush, and I'm just going to paint all these beads. Now, this dupe comes from an inspiration from Walmart, and on the Walmart tray, they actually had these beads very, very distressed. So what I'm going to do now is take some fine grit sandpaper, and I am just going to sand these beads down so that way a lot of the natural wood comes through from underneath. And I probably wasn't even using the right sandpaper. I should have probably got even stronger or harder sandpaper, but I just used what I had. But I just totally distressed these beads so you can see a lot of the natural wood come through. And that's why I said earlier, you don't really need to go for full coverage when you paint these beads, because we were just going to distress them anyways. So after my tray was complete, it was time to pull out one of these new calendars. And from this calendar, I'm going to use the September page, and I'm simply going to cut out this truck. Now, I am going to cut around it so I have just the truck and try to get all the white around it. And then I do go around the pumpkins and the stems, and I also cut out the window as well. So all I'm going to be using here is this truck. Now, this is where the tray kind of switches up a little bit from the dupe, because I did not have the exact image they used, so I just used my own, but I think it came out pretty close besides that. After that, I printed off Welcome Fall from my Cricut, and of course you can use stickers or stencils or rub-on letters. And now I'm just kind of working with my positioning here. And I wanted the welcome and fall to kind of be offset, and I wanted the truck to be under the fall, but obviously offset from that too. So I'm just going to figure out where I want my tray, or everything on my tray, to be. So I'm just arranging my words, arranging the truck, making sure it's all lined up. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and push my letters down by using this little tool from Cricut. And then it came off easy peasy. Now, before I put this transfer tape paper on my tray, I did fuzz it on my pants a little bit so it wasn't so sticky. After that, I went ahead and applied some Mod Podge to the bottom of my tray, and then I decided just to go ahead and go over the letters as well. And then I put my truck right on top of the Mod Podge. And then I'm going to put one more coat of Mod Podge all over my truck and the letters. That way it protects the letters and the paper. Now, this calendar paper is extremely thin, so I always get wrinkles, but it doesn't really bother me because I think it just adds to the rustic look, so I think it's fine. So now to distress it down a little bit more, I'm taking my little sanding block and I'm just sanding the letters down so they're not so bold and black. And then I'm also kind of doing that to the truck, but you want to be very careful when you go over the truck. All right, so the tray did have handles, and they were like wire black handles. So I was trying to think, okay, what can I use? And I found these little easels at the Dollar Tree, so I thought, okay, I'm going to use these. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. If the tray at Walmart did not have handles, I would not have put handles on this. This was a pain, but for the sake of the dupe and getting it to look like the one from Walmart, I'm going to add the handles, but I'll be honest, I'm probably going to take them off. So the first thing I did was use my wire cutters to cut off the top part of each one of the easels, and this was kind of hard. It was just not an easy snap with the wire cutters. It was tough. So what you have to do is you just kind of have to keep scoring it with your wire cutters, kind of just snip, 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 and then you bend it back and forth until finally the top breaks off. So that's what I'm doing. I mean, it was a good workout, I guess. So finally I got one end off. So I'm pushing really hard. And you can see where it is kind of like, making a mark, but you do just kind of go back and forth until they break off. So finally, after I had both of my easels cut down, I thought that it might be best to add some duct tape around the bottoms of the ends of the little easels, because it would help have something to adhere to the tray. So after I had the duct tape on, I flipped over my tray. I added a ton of hot glue, and another reason why I added the duct tape was because metal and hot glue don't get along, so I thought it would stick better to the duct tape. So now I'm just going to reinforce it with even more duct tape, and you do kind of have to hold it there until the glue sets up. Now, this is when I say I just would not have gone through any of this if there weren't handles on the original piece, because it was kind of a pain to figure out how to attach these without I couldn't staple these in because this is plastic. But if you have any ideas on how I could have attached this wire handle to this plastic tray, please let me know, because I was honestly racking my brain. And as you saw, I did put some permanent glue there to kind of help it hold. But you're going to see what I have to end up doing, and it was just not good. So the handles really weren't sticking very well, so I did have to put some duct tape on the bottom. Now, obviously this is red duct tape, and it does not go with this tray at all. I don't know if I had some silver or some white, and I guess I could have painted the duct tape. I just thought of that. But you can't see it from the bottom, but I know it's there, and it does stick out. Like the handles just would not stick no matter what glue I used or what tape I used. But nonetheless, that's what I ended up doing on both sides. So I took my second easel, and again, I'm just going to wrap the ends, the points, with some duct tape. That way it helps to adhere the handle down better to the plastic. And I did make sure to go over the point as well, like cover the end. Then again, I'm going to flip my tray over, add some hot glue and that permanent glue, that super glue. And the other tray actually did have some feet, so I did decide to take some 20mm beads and add a bead on every corner, kind of like on the inside of my tray. To do this, I did just use some hot glue, and even though it really does look like an eyesore underneath, the handles are actually functional. I could actually use the handles. So the only thing that was different was on the handles on the Walmart tray, they did have beads or some kind of spindle or something, but I just did not want to fight and try to use my wire cutters to cut it open again. So I just decided to skip that. But otherwise, I really love how this tray came out. Like I said, I might go ahead and take off the handles, but either way, I'm in love. For my second dupe, I am kind of getting my inspiration from something I saw at Big Lots. My mom wanted a new door hanger for her front door for fall, and actually she described it, and then I happened to find what she was looking for on the Big Lots website, and again, I had the stuff to make it. So the first thing I'm going to do is start off with this wooden pumpkin, again from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to use my scraper to pop off those leaves. I did not end up using these leaves in this DIY, but I knew I could use them in the future, so I saved them. I was also trying to save these letters, or these words, and you see how well that turned out. But using my scraper really did help a lot. So after I had all of the pieces off of my pumpkin, I chose just to flip it over on its back, and I am going to fill the holes, so I just used some of my Dollar Tree spackling to do that. And then once the spackle dried, I sanded it down. That way it was nice and smooth and ready for me to paint. So for this first pumpkin out of 3, we are going to be painting each of the pumpkins 3 different colors. So this first one is going to be ivory. Now, I am also using 3 different sizes of pumpkins, so you are going to see that as well. But for the first one, like I said, I gave it a good coat of ivory chalk paint. This is the second one I'm using, and it is a jack-o'-lantern, and of course I had to pull off the 3D mouth, and then I flipped it over. I cut off the little string there, the ribbon, and again, I'm going to cover my holes because I'm not going to actually be using any of the holes. Then I'm going to sand it down, and this time I'm actually going to paint this in agave because my mom is more blue toned in her house and outside. If you remember from our front porch makeover, she had a lot of blues. So I am going to use that. In the actual inspiration in the one for Big Lots, it was like a green. So that would be the change that I made here. So once I gave that a paint of agave, I put that to the side and I grabbed grabbed the bigger pumpkin, and I am just prying off this little metal leaf. I am going to be using that leaf in this DIY, so I am going to keep it close. And then I decided I wanted to take my sand sponge and just sand all that glitter off. So right now I'm doing it over my trash can. That's why you couldn't see it. That way it didn't, shed all over everything. Next, again, I'm going to fill in my holes, sand it down. And I am actually going to paint this in the pumpkin orange paint from Waverly. So the colors I'm using are ivory, agave, and pumpkin, and they are all chalk paints from Waverly. And I really got away with just doing one coat on each one of these pumpkins. Now, as you can see, I did not do the stems. So for the stems, I'm going to use my nutmeg apple barrel paint, and I'm going to do that for all of my stems. I'm going to make sure that I have full coverage on the stems, and then I'm going to paint each of them. The cool thing I really loved about these pumpkins is that they all had different shaped stems, so I thought that it made each one look even more unique. So after I painted my stems, it was time to make these look like pumpkins. So what I did was I took my Waverly Antique Wax and a small detail brush, and I'm just drawing those pumpkin lines. I'm following the shape of the pumpkin. I'm doing the little, like the curves, and I am also going around the perimeter too. That way it highlighted those as well. Now, the Big Lots pumpkins, they were 3D, but I didn't have any more of those 3D pumpkins, so I'm just kind of making it look, have the illusion of it being 3D, and I'm just doing my best to give it that illusion. So, like I said, I'm just dry brushing that antique wax all around it, and then I'm going to go a little bit in the middle as well to give it even more detail and highlighting. So, as you can see, I'm just, kind of filling in wherever it looks like it needs. Then I grabbed my blue one, and I'm going to do the same thing. And you can see that I'm just following the curves and the bumps that are already on each one of the pumpkins. And each one of them is a different shape, so they are all going to look a little different. So, and then again, I'm just going to go over this entire thing with little strokes of the Waverly Antique Wax to give it even more dimension. And it was super easy to do. I actually really enjoy doing stuff like this. It's just, it's painting, and I really have enjoyed doing that. Then I'm going to grab my orange pumpkin, and I'm going to do the same thing. And this time I'm actually using my finger to kind of rub it in. And I wish I would have thought to do that on the other two because I liked the look this gave. It made it look kind of more, kind of more blended, I guess. And I don't know, I think this one came out the best out of all of them. So I would say if you're going to do this, definitely use your finger to help blend these lines in. I just thought that it helped with like the shadowing. It made it look realistic. Again, it could be this one. I thought this one looked best because it is actually orange too. So that could be it as well. But as you can see, I'm using the points of the pumpkin, and I'm using the lines that are already there to go ahead and just follow the curves of the pumpkin. And again, I'm paying attention to the edges. And then I am going down, and I did this on the other two pumpkins as well, but I'm kind of just adding some shading and highlighting to the bottom of those pumpkins too. So then I'm just going to go in between each one of the little sections and add some highlighting there too. And again, I'm using my finger to go ahead and blend it in. I really loved the way that this one turned out. Like I said, I think this one looks the best out of all of them. So after that was done, I took this little wood plank that I got from the Dollar Tree. It's just a little wood piece, and it's the rectangle, and I'm giving it a faux stain by dipping a wipe into my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just doing the front and the sides. The back is not going to be seen. Then I'm going to dry brush my ivory paint. I didn't even dip this brush back into the paint after I was finished painting the pumpkin. I just used whatever was on the brush, and I'm just dry brushing over that little wood piece. Next, I'm going to take my crocodile tool, and this actually makes holes in wood and metal and different materials, and I just punched 2 holes. And then I took this little metal welcome sign that I pulled off of another DIY and gave it a good coat of white chalk paint. After that, it was time to glue that welcome word on to the wooden sign. And again, like I said earlier, metal and hot glue don't mix, so I'm using that permanent or that super glue and hot glue so that way I can adhere this word onto this wooden plaque. And I did kind of do it at an angle because that's what it looked like on the original piece from Big Lots. So I just went ahead and glued it down. So after I make sure that that my word is completely glued down, I just decided I wanted to distress it a little bit more. Then I'm going to take the blue pumpkin, and this one is going to be the middle pumpkin. And I'm going to put my plank on top, and then by using some twine, that's actually how I'm going to attach this to the pumpkin. So I'm going to take my twine, put it through the back of the wood piece, tie a few knots on top of each other to make it one big knot, or look like it was one big knot, and then I'm going to wrap it around the stem of that blue pumpkin and do the same thing. I'm going to tie a couple knots so that way this is on my my pumpkin, this little sign. And there we go. And then I am going to adjust it. And again, it was kind of angled on the pumpkin, so I am going to glue it down like that. And I did also tack those little knots down with hot glue as well. And there we go. So that is what our middle pumpkin is going to look like. Next, I'm going to take that metal leaf that I got off that one big pumpkin originally, and I'm just going to hot glue it to the stem. Now, I always buy multiples of things, so I did happen to have more metal leaves because I had more of those orange pumpkins, so I used those to put on the other ones as well. And then I just decided that it needed a little bit more highlighting and dimension, so I'm just adding a little bit more in with my paintbrush and my Waverly Antique Wax. Then I grabbed the other two leaves and went ahead and put those on the other two pumpkins. So after I got the orange pumpkin done, I went ahead and glued the leaf on the white one, and then again just took my brush and gave it a little bit more detail and highlighting. Then it was time to assemble our sign. So what I did was I lined each one of my pumpkins up, and the white one is on top, the blue one is in the middle, and then I flipped them upside down. Then I took some of this nautical rope and I used almost a whole strand of it. And by using this super glue and my hot glue, I'm going to glue the rope on the back of each one of my pumpkins. Now I did kind of cut it off, but at the top I did leave some slack there so you can hang it, and it is just one piece, so it starts at the end, goes all the way up, around, and down. So I know this is not two separate pieces, this is all the same piece of nautical rope. So after I get the first one glued on, I just moved to the second one, and I'm trying to keep the rope very straight so that way it lays really nice. And there we go. And again, I did push these down, waited for them to dry. Then after I got the second one done, I moved to the third one and did the same thing. And after that was done, I went ahead and cut off the leftover rope. So I really love how this sign came out. My mom loved it too, and she really loved the colors. She loved the blue instead of the green. So here's a look at the one from Big Lots. So like I said, those are 3D, $14, not bad, but I just wanted to give it a try. What do you think? This last dupe was another one that my mom saw at Hobby Lobby, and she asked me if I could make it, and I really wanted to attack this one. I just thought I totally could make it. So I'm using 4 different signs for this, and they are all different heights because in the Hobby Lobby one, they were all different heights. So first one I'm going to use is this autumn sign or fall sign, and I had to pry off that frame. This was kind of tough, but then I got a system, and what I did was used a knife, actually, that little scraping knife right there, that tool, and that really helped. So you're going to see the first thing we're going to do is prep all of our box boards, and these are all box signs. So after I get the front frame off, I am going through and sanding it down so it's smooth. Next, I'm using this little board this sign from Easter, and I'm just going to sand all of the glitter down. And then I'm going to use this other sign, and these are 2 different sizes. Now, they obviously are not going to have these Easter ones, but they do have something like this in stores now for fall. Next, I'm going to use this gather sign, but I don't actually need the gather part, so this was so simple to take off. I just put my little scraper underneath and I pried it off. Next, I gave each one a couple coats of ivory chalk paint. Now I do have these lined up how I'm going to arrange them. So I did the biggest, wider one first, then the square, then the taller rectangle, and then the even taller rectangle. Now those 2 smaller ones did have hangers on the back, so I did have to pry those off as well. So next it was time to, of course, distress these. So by using that little chunky brush, I'm going to dry brush over each one of these boards with my Waverly Antique Wax. And I'm just going to make sure to really pay attention to the edges and the sides of these as well, because I really wanted to highlight those and to kind of give it that chippy wood look and that rustic look. So this sign was so big it was hard for me to keep it in frame, so that's why a little bit's going to be cut off here and there. So, but I am definitely trying my best. Now, if I got a little heavy-handed with the Waverly Antique Wax, I just used my my foam brush with the ivory paint on it, and I just kind of went over it just to kind of dull it down a little bit. But I went in between using the ivory paint and the Waverly Antique Wax until I got the look I was going for. So I'm just working on it until I like it. And like I said, I really loved how this came out. I think it actually came pretty darn close to the original. So now I'm just kind of taking away some of that brown because I realized it was just a little too much. So now it's time to arrange all these. Now, as you can tell, the frame of these box signs not that thick, so I decided to add some tumbling tower blocks to each one on the inside. That way it gave it more support and something to hold on to. So I just hot glued the tumbling tower blocks to the inside of the signs, but they're flush up against the top of the frame. I really hope that makes sense. So after I got the first one done, it was time to hot glue this board on top of the second one. So I'm just adding some hot glue, and I'm going to place it on top of on the square one off to the side. So on the side of my box sign there. And I have to hold it down until the glue sets. Next, I took the rectangular sign, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add some tumbling tower blocks so it has something to adhere to. I'm going to add a good amount of hot glue and then hot glue that one to the other side of the smaller sign. Now, you do want to make sure that at the bottom, and I'm sorry, I know it's cut off, but you want to make sure it's all even so it stands straight. Next, I turned the whole thing over, and now I'm going to add some tumbling tower blocks to the inside of that third little rectangle, and I'm going to just hot glue those on. And then once I have all of those pieces hot glued, I'm going to flip it over and hot glue that on top of the taller box sign. And again, like I said, you want to make sure that you keep this all lined up at the bottom so it stands up straight and it's not wobbly. There we go. So, and now I'm going to go through and just add some hot glue where I see necessary, just to give it a little extra support. All right, so now it is time to add some more distressing, and in the one from Hobby Lobby, there was just like random strokes of Waverly Antique Wax. So what I'm doing is just going around the edges of each one of these boards to make them pop a little bit more. Then you're going to see that I just add random strokes of the antique wax in the middle of each one of these boards too, because that's how it was in the original one. So there you go. I'm just making random strokes, and then I'm brushing them on with my finger, kind of rubbing it with my finger, making them all blend in. I really do think that this touch like really brought all of these to life. I really love this. This piece came out so cute. I really want to take it with me when I move, but I made it for my mom. So I did notice that that big square, or the rectangle, the first board we did, was not, it was just kind of flimsy. So what I'm doing is actually adding tumbling tower blocks, kind of like as a stand to the back of the frame on that one. And I know I cut it off here, but I ended up adding 3 to help hold it up, and that really helped. So it just gave it some extra support. Now, I did forget, while I was doing this, I wanted to paint that ivory and I forgot, but I do end up going back. Then with my Cricut, I printed out some letters, but again, you can do this with stencils, you can freehand it, you can do it with rub-on transfers, you can do it with stickers, but I just spelled out fall, and I did each letter a little differently. I made them proportional to the sign that it was going to be on. So next I am weeding all of this out. And if you are a seasoned Cricut person, you are probably cringing with the way I'm doing this because I just wasted so much black vinyl, but I really did not know of any other way to do that. So I am just weeding it all off. And then rather than using transfer tape to put these on, I'm honestly just going to peel it off like a sticker and apply it to my board. So of course, the first one I did was an F. So I just took it off just like a sticker. And then I'm going to apply it right in the middle of that first one. Now I am kind of making it a little lower on the board because we will be adding a leaf and some raffia, so I don't want to, get in the way of that. Then I'm going to add my A, and got that right in the middle, and then my first L in the middle of the other one, and then last I have my tall, skinny L. The cool thing about this is that if you do make a mistake, it's easy to peel up and move. There you go. So now I'm getting my skinny L on, pushing it all down, making sure it is all positioned correctly. Then I'm putting a coat of Mod Podge on the front. Now, you don't really have to do this, but because I'm a newer Cricut user, I just feel more comfortable putting it on. It just makes me feel better. So I'm going to apply Mod Podge all over each one of my little signs, just to protect the letters so they don't peel off. I don't think they're supposed to, but like I said, it just makes me feel better. So after that, I'm going to be using some plunger sticks to create some stems. Now you do see I have some foam brush handles there. I don't actually use those. I just have like this scrap plunger brush or plunger stick. So I cut them down the heights that I wanted, and I did cut them at a 45-degree angle because in the original piece, they were like at an angle. And I did cut them different lengths, and then just kind of decided which one looked best on which sign. And I am sanding these down as well because they were kind of, ragged at the end. And now I'm going to faux stain them, and I'm going to dip my baby wipe into Waverly Antique Wax and just brush all over the stems. And then once they were all faux stained, this is when I'm trying to figure out which stem looks best where. And I am going to alternate, so I'm going to put one facing the right side, just like that. And I'm just using hot glue to attach these. It works out fine. And then I'm going to have the second one, sorry about my head, facing the left. And then again, I'm just going to repeat it. This one facing the right. There we go. And then the fourth one facing the left. You can see that it's really coming out. You might have even seen this piece in Hobby Lobby if you're an avid Hobby Lobby shopper. All right, so next I'm going to take some painter's tape, and I'm going to take off a huge piece, and then I'm going to put it down on my table. And next I'm going to take these little leaves. Now these little leaves have clothespins on them, and they are so hard to get off. But you just have to just pry it off. I mean, you could take like maybe a knife and get under there and get it, but I mean, it is a little work, but I just really wanted these to be flat. So I really worked hard to get each one of the clothespins off. But see, eventually they do come off. So next, after I had 4 of them taken apart, I put them on my painter's tape, and this just makes it easier for them to paint. So that way they're not, you know, moving around and you're not totally getting paint all over your fingers. But I just used my Christmas green paint to paint the actual leaf part, and then that nutmeg brown to paint the stem. So I'm just making sure it's all painted. And they all look like, I feel like it looks like lettuce here, but you know. And then I sanded them down just so it wasn't so green and it made it look rustic. And now it's time to hot glue these to our sign. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to simply use some hot glue. And I am putting them in different positions and facing different ways just to kind of change it up a little bit. There we go. And next I'm going to add a raffia bow to each one of the stems. And that's it. That completed this super cute dupe. I think this one's my favorite out of all of them because I think it looks the closest to the original. So, and it was a lot of fun to do. So here is the original, $17.99. Again, not bad. But when my mom asked me if I could do it, I said, sure, why not? Let's give it a try. What do you think? For my first DIY, I'm going to start off with this summer sign, and it's like the arrow sign. So all I'm doing is pulling off the ribbon on the back, and you want to be careful because they are stapled in. And then I'm just going to take my sanding block and I'm going to sand down the holes because they were just a little rough. Now I'm going to have to cut these down in order to make my DIY. So I'm going to grab this knife and my little cutting board, and all I'm going to do is use one as a straight edge and then just cut off the arrow part. And I'm going to do that to 2 of these boards. So as you can see, I'm using the one that I cut down as a straight edge for the other one. And all I'm doing is taking my knife and I'm scoring it a few times until it allows me to bend it back and forth and eventually break off. And then you also want to sand down the edges. After that, I took the 3rd board and I'm just going to cut out 2 rectangles. Now, I do end up changing this part, but I wanted to show you that I did this because this could give you an idea on how to actually use this. But in reality, you actually want about half of that little square that I just cut. So this will make more sense as the video goes along, but I did cut off 2 of these squares. Now I am left with 2 long boards and 2 squares. So at first I start off hot gluing my squares at the very ends of one of the boards because we're going to make a little box. But like I said, I do end up changing it, but I did want to walk you through this because you can still use that 3rd little sign to do this part. You just don't want them this wide like I had them. They could really each get cut down in half. And like I said, this will all make sense in just a little bit. But I just made sure to secure them down with hot glue. And then after I had both of my sides on, I hot glued on the top. And you want to make sure that it's all lined up and flush with each other. After that, I'm going to take my Mocha Apple Barrel paint and I'm going to paint this entire thing. Next, I took these two pumpkins that I got from the Dollar Tree. This bigger one has raised little wood pieces, and then this other one is a tray. So all I need are the pumpkins from the tray. So I tried to cut them off, and I learned that if you just stick your blade in between the pumpkin and the little tray part, and then just slide down, it comes off so easily. It just breaks whatever is holding it, glue, I don't even know, but it just comes off so easily. So it is a lot easier to get off than I thought it would be. And then you just kind of bend it back and forth and break the bottom off. Then of course you want to sand the edges so they are nice and smooth. Next, it's time to paint. So for the first pumpkin, the solid one, I painted that in my pumpkin Waverly chalk paint. For the second pumpkin, I painted that with my Moss Waverly chalk paint. Now, I forgot to mention, but you probably see that I am not painting any of the stems on any of these pumpkins because I'm going to do something different. Then for my bigger pumpkin, I'm going to paint that entire thing with the Ivory chalk paint from Waverly. Next, I'm going to add highlighting to all of my pumpkins. To do this, I took a really small brush and then my chocolate bar apple barrel paint, and I just highlighted the edges. Now, I did switch to a makeup sponge because I thought that it might be easier, but you're going to see that I kind of keep going back and forth between the two. So for this pumpkin with the little slats, I just went around them and just added some highlighting. I also did this same method to the bigger pumpkin and the orange pumpkin. Now for the orange pumpkin, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take my makeup sponge and I'm going to go around the edges, and you can see that I'm really not putting a lot on, and I'm using my finger to smear it and kind of blend it all in. Then for the middle, I'm just kind of creating those pumpkin lines by doing two bigger lines and then two of them in the middle. But in a little bit, you're actually going to see that I actually kind of change this up a little bit. For the bigger pumpkin, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just going to put some paint around the edges and then use my finger to smear it and blend it in. Now, I did not put any lines in the middle of any of those slats. I just kind of traced around them on the edges, which you'll see. But I really love this method. I think it makes it look so rustic, but also it adds a lot of dimension to these pumpkins. Next, to add just a little bit more detail, I took the same brush that I painted the big pumpkin with the ivory paint, and I just dry brushed that over my green and orange pumpkins. Then this is where I decided to change up the orange pumpkin a little bit. I have this leftover wooden egg from Easter time, so I decided to hot glue that to the middle of the pumpkin to give it that raised wood look. And then I went ahead and painted that with that orange pumpkin paint, and then once that's dry, I'm gonna go ahead and put those highlighting lines on there. Now, I did have to go over at the bottom where the words were, it said Hobby Lobby on them. I did have to go over that a few times with that paint to get it to completely cover. So now I'm just adding my highlighting pumpkin lines, but I really loved doing this because it just made it more dimensional and just kind of changed it up a little bit. And the other two pumpkins had something kind of special about them, so I felt like this needed something special too. Now for the stems, I started in the back of each pumpkin and I just simply wrapped each stem with twine. And then I'm just putting hot glue just here and there as I see fit. Now it gets a little trickier as you get to the top because it gets skinnier, but you're just gonna have to use more hot glue and just kind of hold it and just work with it, and then eventually you will have it covered. But I did this on all 3 of my stems. After that, I took my box, and this is where I decided to change it. So the first thing I did was deconstruct it, and I took it apart. So now instead of having those square pieces on the end, I am going to hot glue a Jenga piece to each end. I'm doing this because it's going to make it a skinnier, narrow box, because I did not need it as big as it was. Now, if you don't have tumbling tower blocks, this is when I said you can just take those rectangles that I cut out and cut them in half, and that should be about the same width. But see how much skinnier that is now? That is what I was going for in the first place. And then after I got those glued on, I just went ahead and painted those with that mocha paint. Now it's time to assemble our piece. So the first thing I did was I added some hot glue to the back of the big pumpkin, and I hot glued that to the back piece of my box. Then I hot glued a tumbling tower block on each side of the big pumpkin and hot glued my little pumpkins on top of those. Don't you love those colors together? They're so pretty. After that, I took the raffia bow that originally came on that big pumpkin, and I went ahead and hot glued it to the big pumpkin. And then I hot glued a raffia bow to the orange one, and I will hot glue one to the green one. I just didn't have it made yet. Next, I took this pack of metal words that I got from the Dollar Tree, and they do have them this year again. And I took the word harvest, and I'm going to paint that with a few coats of black acrylic paint. Now, what's really weird is that it actually kind of came out rustic, like the paint didn't really stick, but I liked how it looked. After that, I took one of the longer dowel rods and I cut just a little piece off of it because we're going to make a handle. So once I had those cut down, I went ahead and sanded the edges, and then I hot glued the smaller piece on top of the longer piece to make a T look. Then I painted that with the black acrylic paint as well. After those pieces were dry, I took my word, and because metal and hot glue do not mix, I'm going to use this super glue from the Dollar Tree. I think it's called the Fix All glue or something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and add some of that for the permanent hold, and then add some hot glue for the immediate hold. And I'm going to hot glue that to the front of my box. And then before I put the handle on, I need to put a Jenga piece at the bottom. So you're going to see that it actually fits right in perfectly at the bottom of my box, just fits right there, and you do want it to hang out. Then I took my mocha paint and covered that as well. I think I forgot to mention that this piece that I'm making was actually something I saw on Pinterest, and unfortunately I don't remember where it was originally from, but once I saw it, I thought it was so pretty and new. I had all the stuff to make it, so I really wanted to try. So after that, I went ahead and grabbed these mason jar lids that I had left over, and I'm gonna paint the outside of the jars with black acrylic paint. Now you do need to give each one of these several coats because the acrylic paint doesn't cover over metal well, but after a couple of coats it did work. Then I took the inside of the mason jar and I'm going to flip them upside down, and I'm going to trace a circle by using my paint bottle, and I am going to my paintbrush broke as I was doing that. I'm going to paint the little circle that I had traced with that mocha paint, and I'm going to do that on both of these little lids. Next, by using that super glue and hot glue, I'm going to glue the insides of the lids to the outsides. And of course, I'm going to put them upside down so that way the part that I painted is facing out. Then by using my hot glue, I'm going to glue my little wheels to either end of my box. Next up, I'm going to take my little handle and I'm simply just going to glue that to the end of that little Jenga block that is sticking out. And then I did tack it down on top of the orange pumpkin to help give it extra support. After that, it's time to make a stand for my little wagon. So remember those square pieces that I had? I went ahead and glued that one to each one of my wheels on the back. And I did this just to give it an extra layer of support and to add some weight on the back so it wasn't so top heavy. See how it's falling back? And then I took 2 Jenga blocks, I hot glued them together side by side, and then I'm going to hot glue those to the bottom of the squares. Now I do end up adding another layer of tumbling tower blocks to give it even more weight, and that seemed to do the trick. Now, just a little tip, when you make stands like this, you do want to, as you are placing your blocks down with the glue on, before you press down and adhere it, you do want to stand your piece up and lean it back a little bit. That way it's supported when it stands up. And there we go. Now it's standing on its own. So now I'm going to go ahead and make that third raffia bow. Of course, this one doesn't look as good as the other ones that came from other, decor pieces. But I'm just going to go ahead and hot glue that to the stem of my green pumpkin and then cut off any extra raffia. And then to add just a little bit more dimension and make it look a little bit more rustic, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and my chippy brush and just dry brush over my wagon. I absolutely love how this came out. Like I said, this was an inspiration from Pinterest, and I love these colors together. I didn't think I would, but I really do. But what do you think? For my second pumpkin DIY, I'm going to be using these cardboard tubes from the Dollar Tree, and I have one big one with the lid on. I have the same one, but I took the lid off, and then this smaller one that says happy birthday. So the first thing I needed to do was take the tag off of the smaller one. So I just used my hair dryer and a scraper to go ahead and scrape it off, and it came off really easily. Then I attempted to take off the tags of the other ones, except for they are part of the cardboard, so it's not a sticker. Next, I'm going to paint all 3 of these tubes with that pumpkin Waverly chalk paint. And I did do a few coats just to make sure that the writing on this one was completely covered, but you can get away with like 1.5 coats on the red ones. Once they were dry, I went ahead and hot glued the lid to one of the taller ones to make that the tallest of my pumpkins. Now, some of the glue did seep through, so I just took my finger carefully and wiped it off. After that, it is time to distress them. So I took my Waverly Antique Wax and my chippy brush, and I am just lightly brushing over each one of these pumpkins. Now, these red ones had kind of like a texture to them, so once I brushed this Waverly wax over it, it really highlighted the texture and brought it out, and it looked so neat. I really loved how the distressing turned out on all 3 of these pumpkins. Now, for the stem of my pumpkins, I had these extra pieces of plunger that I cut down from other DIYs, so I just decided to use these. Ideally, I would have liked to go outside and grab some branches or sticks, but it was pouring when I was making this, and I did not have time to wait. So that's just what I decided to do. Now, one of my sticks was already painted brown from another DIY, so I just took a baby wipe and dipped it in my antique Waverly wax to faux stain the other 2. After that, I was just deciding which stem would look best on which pumpkin, and then I just used some hot glue to go ahead and hot glue them down to the middle of my pumpkins. Once they were glued down, it was time to accessorize. So the first thing I added were some leaves, and I'm just cutting off some leaves from one of those garlands from the Dollar Tree, and I'm adding 2 leaves to each one of my pumpkins. Now, I did make sure to kind of mix up the colors of leaves, so that way there weren't 2 of the same color. I don't know why, I just thought it looked better like that. And originally I did only have 1 leaf on each one of these back 2 pumpkins, but I do eventually add a second. So now I'm taking 2 different colored strands of the berry garlands, and I'm going to hot glue those down at the bottom of my stem, and I did wrap it around. Then I'm going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to curl them to make the tendrils of my pumpkin. And like I said, I have 2 different berry garlands here. So I have an orange one and then like a white and green one. So I'm going to do that to all 4 of those little ends. And then I hot glued the back of the berry garland down as well, so that way it didn't like push up. Next, I'm going to take this really pretty gold ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make a very simple bow and then hot glue that to the bottom part of my stem. And then I also made a raffia bow out of green raffia, so then I'm going to hot glue that to the front of my ribbon bow. And as you can see, I'm just kind of fluffing up the raffia because I like it to kind of be wild and crazy, not just like one straight bow all the way across. So I'm just kind of moving my little vines around, making sure I have it exactly how I like. And then I'm going to take some twine and make a little twine bow and hot glue that to the front of my raffia bow. Now, I did make sure to keep my tails long on my twine bow. That way they drape over the front of my pumpkin and it adds a little detail to the front of my pumpkin. After that, I'm going to take these little berries that I got from picks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to hot glue them underneath my raffia bow. And I have like these bigger orange and red ones, and then I have these like dark ones, the dark red ones. So I'm kind of using a mixture of both and just hot gluing them in. Now, then I repeat that with the other 2 pumpkins. So I do that same thing to the other 2 pumpkins. So I already did one, you watched me do my second, and then here is the third. Now, the third one is the shortest one, and that one is going to go in the front of the other 2 on my display. And I'm going to show you how I actually switched this one up a little bit. So because I arranged all of my accessories the same way, I'm just going to speed right through this. So as you saw, I added my berry garlands and then my ribbon bow, my raffia bow. But before I tie my twine bow, I'm going to take a piece of twine and I'm going to wrap it around my stem and bring it underneath all of the bows and everything to the front. I should have done this at first, but I didn't think about it. And I am going to leave those little strings long. Next, I'm going to take these wooden words that I got in a pack from the Dollar Tree, and these are new, and how stinking cute are these? So I decided to go with welcome fall, but I didn't really want the welcome. So I just decided to use my scissors and cut the welcome part off, and then I cut off, you can see how the line extends past the F and the L, so I just cut those off too. Sorry, I'm a little out of frame. But after I got that all cut down, I took my Waverly Antique Wax, I dipped a baby wipe in it, and then I used that as a faux stain to stain my wooden word. And then I'm going to simply tie my word on the ends of the twine that we just wrapped around the pumpkin. Now, I loosely tied that on there because I wanted the word to hang in the front of my pumpkin. Then I did tack the word down with some hot glue. After that, I'm going to go ahead and make my little twine bow and hot glue that to my raffia bow. And then I'm going to take more of these little berries and I'm going to put those underneath my raffia bow. Now, I thought that I was done, but I really felt like it needed something more in the front of that smaller pumpkin. So I took this leaf wood cutout that I had from last year and dry brushed some antique Waverly wax over it using my chippy brush. And then I added some twine and then tied that around the front of my pumpkin. So I want the word fall to hang over my leaf. So I'm just kind of arranging it how I like, and like I said, I'm going to hang it in the front. So I'm putting my piece of twine underneath all of my bows and all of the accessories and everything. So I'm just going to tie it in the back and tack it down with some hot glue, and that completes these 3 little pumpkins. So now it's time to put them all on a display. So I grabbed this wooden charger that I got from Michael's actually, but I know that they have them at the Dollar Tree, and I simply just hot glued my pumpkins down. So I put the taller one next to the middle size and then the smallest one in front of both of those. And I love how this turned out. Then I just took it a step further and accessorized the entire thing with some pine cones and some little acorns. And how more fall can you get? I actually kind of think this is a little primitive as well, but it is totally rustic and totally my style, and I love it. What do you think? For my last DIY, I'm going to start off with this little Easter gnome that I had left over from obviously Easter. And I'm going to use my little scraper tool to pry up the carrot that is on the gnome and the nose, but you want to keep both of those things to the side because we will be using them. Then I realized that it was really easy to just go ahead and peel up all of that paper. So that's exactly what I did, and I used my scraper to help me do that as well. After I had my paper all scraped up, I took my pencil and I just drew lines of where I wanted to cut off the little bunny ears. Then I took my knife and I scored where I drew my lines a few times until I was able to bend them back and forth and break them off. After I had them both cut off, I took my sanding sponge and I sanded both of the sides down to make them nice and smooth. After that, I'm going to take this plaid scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby and I'm going to Mod Podge this on the top of the hat. So rather than tracing the hat on the paper and cutting it out, I'm going to go ahead and just apply Mod Podge and apply the paper on top, and then I'm going to use my scissors to go ahead and cut around it. Now I'm just kind of doing like a dry cut. I'm not getting as close as I can because after that I'm going to take my sanding sponge and I'm going to sand the edges to make it that nice clean cut. This is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving what you're seeing and that you want to see more. So YouTube will put more of my content in your suggested videos. So please give me a like. It would be truly appreciated. After I had that all sanded down, I took my ivory chalk paint from Waverly and I went ahead and painted the beard. Now first I did take a pencil and I outlined where I wanted the shoes to be. That way I knew not to paint those ivory because I'm going to paint those brown in just a little bit. But I did go ahead and give this one coat of ivory chalk paint. Then I put that aside to dry and I took another one of these pumpkin trays, and again by using my knife and just putting the knife in between the pumpkin and the holder, I'm just going to pry it off. Now this time I only need one pumpkin and I chose to use the solid one. Then I'm going to take my Waverly pumpkin chalk paint and I'm going to paint my pumpkin, and then after that I'm going to paint my stem with the chocolate brown paint. Then I'm going to use that same paint to give this the highlighting pumpkin lines. So to draw the lines, I'm just starting on one end and then I'm just making a curved line out, and then I'm going to repeat that and do it on the inside as well. And I really love how this one was painted. I almost like this one better than the first one I did in that first DIY. I don't know why, it just looks a lot better and more realistic. But I did go ahead and outline the perimeter of my pumpkin too. And then you're going to see that I kind of dry brush that paint in between all of the lines, and I just really love the rustic look of this pumpkin. Now, even though I don't need a carrot in this DIY, I do need those little hands. So all I'm going to do is take my knife and just cut around. Now, I'm not trying to get every little finger. I'm just going to cut around and make it rounder at the bottom. Then again, after I get both of my hands off, I'm going to cut them down to clean them up, and then I'm going to sand around the edges to make them nice and smooth. Next, I'm going to take that chocolate brown paint and I'm going to paint both of my little hands with that. Then, while I had the paint out, I went ahead and painted his little shoes. Next, I took my black Sharpie marker and I'm just kind of drawing some wavy lines to make it look like hair. And then if it got a little dark, I just painted over it with my ivory lines. And I just kind of did this until I got the look I was going for. Now, I did add the nose, so that way it helped me guide where those little hairlines would be. But look how cute that is. I think it adds a lot of dimension too. Next, I'm going to take that same gold ribbon that I used in the previous DIY, and I'm going to hot glue that onto where the paper meets his hair. So kind of like the brim of his little hat. Next, I'm going to take this canvas that I had from like a canvas board from the Dollar Tree, and I'm always using just the wood from that, but I always keep the canvas just in case it comes in handy, and it did this time. So all I need to do is cut off 4 little rectangles. Then I'm going to take a piece of twine and I'm going to glue it going across the fatter part of my pumpkin, and I'm going to hot glue it in the back. Next, I'm going to take the little rectangles I made out of the canvas, and I realized they were just a little bit too wide, so I took 2 of them and cut them in half to create 4 pieces, and then I'm going to fold those in half and kind of dovetail them like you would to the end of ribbons to make it look like a banner piece. And then I'm going to do that to the other 2 as well. Now you can see that I have some canvas there glued to my twine. I had tried to do this and realized they were way too fat and too big and they didn't fit, and then I had to pull them off. So then once I had them all cut down, I went ahead and hot glued them onto the twine to create a little banner. Next, I'm going to take my little hands and I'm going to hot glue those to my little banner as well. After that, I hot glued my pumpkin to my gnome, and I put the pumpkin all the way at the bottom of my gnome, kind of so it was covering his little feet. Next, I took his little nose and I just dry brushed some of that chocolate brown paint or chocolate bar paint on it just to add a little bit of highlighting and dimension, and I kind of just went around the perimeter. And then I went ahead and hot glued his nose in the middle of that ribbon. Next, I did decide to go ahead and tack down the little banner pieces, that way they didn't flip up. Next, by using that chocolate bar paint again, I went ahead and went around the edges of the hat to give that some highlighting as well, and to make it look a little bit more rustic. Then I went over those banner pieces to make those look a little bit more rustic too. Next, I decided I needed to add something to his hat, so I took this little leaf wood cutout, and it does have a clothespin on the back, so I did have to pry that off. It did take me a minute to get this off, I am going to be honest, but I just took my knife and did the same thing. I just kind of slid it back behind the clothespin and just broke it off, but you do want to be very, very careful not to break off the stem of the leaf. After I got the clothespin off, I just faux stained it by dipping a baby wipe in my Waverly Antique Wax. Now, I did start off with only one of these leaves, but in a little bit, you're going to see that I actually add a second. So now I'm just kind of deciding where I want to put it, and I am just going to place it at the top of my hat for now. Then I took a piece of twine and I'm going to make a little twine bow, and I'm going to hot glue that to the bottom of the stem of my pumpkin. Next, I'm going to take these black sticker letters that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to spell out fall, putting one letter on each pendant of my banner. Then, to secure my stickers down, I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge over them. Then here's where I decided to add that second leaf. So I went ahead and faux stained that as well. And the cool thing is that this one actually turned out a little darker than that first one. So there is a little contrast between the two. So then I just decided where I wanted to put them, and I put them at the top of my hat and layered them on top of each other. Next, I took a piece of twine and I looped it to make a little hanger for the back. I thought this little gnome came out so adorable. This was actually kind of a dupe from something I saw from the Lakeside collection. I get that magazine and I absolutely love looking through it. Every time I get it, they have some wonderful home decor ideas. And when I saw it, I knew I could probably recreate it. And I'm so happy I did, and I cannot wait to display this fall. What do you think? For my next DIY, I decided I was going to make a big sign to place on top of the mantle. So I got this wood cupboard door a while ago at a local grocery store, and they were 2 for 99 cents. Yes, you heard that right. 2 for 99 cents. It's crazy. But so obviously I picked up a ton. So all I'm going to do is give the inside of this door a good coat of plaster chalk paint from Waverly. Now at first you can see I'm just painting the inside, and now I'm going to go through with some painter's tape and tape off the edges because I'm actually going to stain like the little frame around it. So I did want to tape this off so I didn't get any of that plaster paint on that. But I could not believe the deal that I got with these, and they have come in handy so much. If you watched my front porch decorating video, that big long welcome sign also came from that grocery store, and that one might have been 99 cents, but these doors right here were 2 for 99 cents, and I hope that they bring them back because, oh my goodness, I would love to stock up. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish painting this plaster, and I'm making sure to get in all the corners. And I just want to point out my surface here. I'm really sorry that to the right or to the left you can see my trash can and then the mess, but that is all I have to work with because the desk is so small. So I apologize, but this is just the only angle I could get so you could see what I'm doing. So after that plaster paint dried, I took my ruler and we're just going to go ahead and make those shiplap lines that you know I love. So I just drew a line on the top of the ruler and the bottom, and now I'm just going to go through and do the same thing all the way down and then all the way to the top. So I pretty much do this to everything because I just love that look. And I love that shiplap look. It's funny because I'm not farmhouse at all, but I do love that look. All right, then to make it look a little bit more rustic, I am taking my finger and I'm just smudging my pencil lines. That way it all blends in. And I really love using this method to make the faux shiplap. I think it just looks so good. And then after that, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and my chippy brush, and I am simply going to dry brush some of that wax all over my cupboard, except for of course, the taped off part. So I'm just dry brushing. I am making sure to pay attention to the little ledges there. See how it got a little darker? So I am paying attention to the edges so they are darker, so they're highlighted more. And then I'm going to go in between right there to that way it adds a little color and dimension and makes it look rustic around there too. So obviously I love using antique wax on everything. That's just my color. Some people distress with black, some people distress with gray. Mine is definitely this wax, the brown, for sure. All right, so now I'm going to go through and use my sanding block to sand everything down to help it all blend in. And also, it brought out the natural wood from underneath, and I really loved that look too. Next, I'm going to take this pack of Decorate Your Own pumpkin ornaments from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to pick out 5. And right now, I'm just kind of arranging how I want them to look, and then I'm going to pick the colors I want. So I'm just laying it out, kind of testing it. And then in a minute, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to write the color that I want on each one. So for this sign, we are going to use the colors white, moss, and pumpkin, all chalk paints from Waverly. So I am going to paint 2 of these pumpkins with the moss chalk paint, 1 pumpkin with the pumpkin chalk paint, and 2 pumpkins with the white chalk paint. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and do my 2 moss, and then I will paint the others. Now, I did decide halfway through that I did want to cover those holes. I actually knew I wanted to do that, but forgot before I started painting. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm going to fill in all the holes and then sand it down and then continue to paint all of my pumpkins. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, thank you so much for choosing to stop by today. I really hope that you love what you see and choose to stick with me for a while by subscribing to my channel. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you love what you see. If you're returning, thank you so much for all of your love and support. You know that you are amazing and I appreciate all of you. And again, please leave me comments because I am going through and trying to reply, but I know that I am so behind. I apologize about that, but you guys just please keep commenting because I love reading all of your comments. So thank you so much for your support, and I can't wait to share with you even more DIYs. All right, so now I'm gonna paint my last pumpkin white, and like I said, I did 2 moss, 2 in the pumpkin orange, or I'm sorry, 2 moss, 1 in the pumpkin orange, and 2 white. Now I'm going to take my nutmeg apple barrel paint and I'm just going to simply paint all of my stems. And I just used this same paint on, or the same color paint on all of them. That way I had nice coverage on the stems. I really love these colors together. Look how good that looks. I'm really loving these 3 colors together. All right, so after all my pumpkins were dry, I'm going to take a really small detail brush, dip it in my antique wax, and I'm just going to make those pumpkin lines. And you know, if you've been following me for a while, that I do this on all the pumpkins. It's nothing new. I mean, I learned from YouTube how to do this. So all I'm doing is just making those curved lines, and you can see the little bumps at the bottom. That's just the guide I'm using. And then I'm also going to go around the perimeter and then also hit in the middle of each of the pumpkins too. And I'm going to do this to every single one of those pumpkins. So this is so easy to do. And I think that this detail brings these pumpkins to life and makes it look even more realistic. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to do this on all of the pumpkins. You're going to have to let me know down in the comments when you decorate for fall, if you decorate for fall, what colors do you do? Are you just very neutral and farmhouse? Do you do the traditional colors? Do you do blues? What colors are you decorating with this fall? I feel like anything goes anymore, and there's not really an in style. I feel like there's such a big percentage that do the traditional, like me, and then there's such a big percentage to do the neutral that just kind of throw in, you know, maybe beige pumpkins or neutral colored decor. So let me know what you're doing. Okay, so after all my pumpkin lines are drawn, I'm going to go through and just sand them all down to help it all blend in. I really think that this helps a lot too. It doesn't make the lines look so bold. Okay, so after that, I'm going to take my cupboard door and I'm going to peel off all the tape. And this time I'm going to take that tape, and I'm going to tape over where I painted, because we are going to stain the frame of this door. So I'm just replacing all of my tape now. And then to stain it, I'm just going to use my Waverly Antique Wax. And I'm going to take a baby wipe and just dip it in the wax and just rub it on. And it was easy as that. And I am going to make sure to get the edges, the sides, the tops, the bottoms, all of it. So I'm just going to go through and faux stain this entire frame. Now, I couldn't decide if I wanted to see how the left side is kind of darker and the right side is kind of lighter. I couldn't decide which I liked better. So you're going to have to let me know in the comments which one you like. Do you like it darker or do you like it lighter? Or do you not see a difference? But look at that natural wood grain that this wax is bringing out. It's so pretty. All right, next we're going to take off all the tape to reveal my stained frame. And then I'm going to get this decal that I made for my Cricut. Now, if you don't have a Cricut, that's okay. You can use rub-on transfers, stickers, stencils, anything that you have that you can do letters. And I just found this on Cricut Design Space, but it did say welcome to our patch. Or no, I'm sorry, it said welcome to our home, but I took out the home and because I only wanted welcome to ours. So now I'm just going to go through and weed everything. So basically I'm taking out all the negative parts, the parts that shouldn't be there. And then I'm going to put my transfer paper on it. And as you can see, I took those pumpkins again and I lined them up at the bottom. So before I go ahead and put my words down, I made sure to have my pumpkins lined up. Now my pumpkins are not glued at this point. So now I just went through and I'm transferring it to the transfer paper. And now this will be easy for me. This transfer paper gave me such trouble because I reused it like 100 times. So needless to say, that was the last time because look how I really have to work with it. Okay, so now I'm going to line up my pumpkins again because they obviously kind of moved, and make sure that they are perfect in how I want them. And then I'm going to, sorry about my head, I had to get right on top of this so I could see. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my words down. So I'm just positioning it, making sure. I did end up cutting off the bottom because it was just easier for me to tell what I was doing. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put my words down, and I'm going to use that little tool to scrape it on. Let me know in the comments, do you have a Cricut? If you've been following me for a while, you know that I just got mine in, I believe it was July. I just saw a good deal. I'd never had a Cricut before, and I saw a good deal on Amazon, and I decided to go for it. And I'm telling you what, I every day sit here and think, why did I not do this years ago? Years ago. I was intimidated for nothing. It is so easy to use. I've made so many projects with it already, and I just love it. It really ups your game in DIYs, I think. Okay, so after I got my words on, I went ahead and hot glued my pumpkins down. Now you can see that I have them overlapping each other, and that orange one in the middle is right on top. So now I just hot glue them to each other, and now I'm going to glue down the ones that are actually going to touch the board to the door. All right, now that they're all glued down, I'm going to take these poster letters that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I am just going to spell out patch, and I'm going to put one letter on each pumpkin. I really love how this came out. I can't wait for you to see it. So I'm just going to put all of my letters on, and my H. And I mean, these letters would be perfect to do this whole sign with, so you don't even have to have a Cricut. But I have an abundance of these letters because I just got my Cricut, so this is what I, used to use. So after those were all down, I'm just kind of checking it out, making sure I like it, and I decided that I did, so that makes this project complete.
I love how this sign came out, and it fit perfectly on my parents' mantle and matched all of her decor that she already had, so I think she loved it too.
So when I create a tiered tray, I do make sure to follow the same color pattern the entire time. So I wanted to show you that these are the paints that I will be using today. I'm going to be using white Waverly chalk paint, the Apple Barrel chocolate bar paint, and Apple Barrel light mocha. You can get all of these at Walmart. For my first DIY, I'm going to be starting off with this palette sign, and this is very little, and I absolutely love using these because these are perfect for a tiered tray. So the first thing I did was pry off that little clip. There was also a bow on top, and I'm going to put that aside to use in another DIY in this video. So to start off, I am painting the top portion of this little palette sign with that light mocha Apple Barrel paint. I am making sure to get the tops and then go down on the side where it stops. I'm also going to paint the bottom palette as well. Now halfway through I did decide to go ahead and fill that hole, so I grabbed my spackle from the Dollar Tree, and then once that was dry, I'm going to paint this middle section in my white Waverly chalk paint. And I am making sure to get the sides as well. Now once that's dry, I'm going to take this chocolate bar paint and I'm just going to dab it along the top of the marshmallow part of our little s'more, and I'm going to hold it up and just let it drip naturally so it looks like melted chocolate. Look how yummy that looks. I do add more wherever I see fit, but I thought that this was so simple and so cute. I did consider putting words on this, but I honestly just thought it was a perfect little filler. And so if I had words, it would just kind of cover it. So next, to add that kind of like highlighting in the graham cracker part, I took this little chunky brush from the Dollar Tree and I just highlighted with that chocolate bar paint. For my next DIY, I'm going to take this piece of canvas that I got from one of those stretch canvas boards from the Dollar Tree, and I always keep the canvases because I know they are going to come in handy, and look at that, it did today. So I'm going to start off by cutting out little triangles. I'm going to make a banner. Now, this DIY I actually made once and then completely changed it, so you're going to see that I actually cut out way more triangles than I actually need, but you only actually need to cut out 5 if you're going to spell out what I spelled out, but you can spell out whatever you want. So after I cut out that first triangle, I folded my entire piece in half, and then I use that first triangle as a guide to cut out the next ones, and this is just a faster way to get 2 out of 1. So then you just unfold it and cut at the crease. So like I said, I cut out a ton more than I actually needed, but I ended up only using 5, which you'll see here in just a little bit. So after that was done, what I did was I lined up all of my banner pieces and I flipped them upside down. Then I'm going to take a piece of twine and I'm going to go 3 at a time, and I'm going to start gluing this twine at the top of my banner pieces. Now you can see that I'm using that little line there to line it all up. So once I get them all lined up, I will start gluing. I am putting these kind of point to point because my tiered tray is very small, which you'll see. So all of these DIYs today had to be very, very small. So now I have them all lined up, and then I'm just going to take a little dab of hot glue, put them on the top, put that on the top of my banner pieces, and then glue it. Now I am starting at the end of the banner, as you can see on the right side, and I am leaving some ribbon or twine at the end. So I am giving me some slack so I can tie this on my tiered tray. So like I said, I'm going to do 3 at a time. I'm going to make sure it's pushed down really well. And then I'm just going to keep going until all of my banner pieces are glued to my piece of twine. This is just the easiest way that I found to make a banner. I'm sure there's other ways or easier ways, but I've made a few banners in my day, so I don't know. This is just always the method I used, because otherwise you would have to, if you did it the other way, you would get glue all over your table or your surface. So this is just the easiest way that I found. So after I had all my pieces glued together, I went ahead and trimmed off my twine again, leaving some slack at the end. After that, I flipped it over. Now, this is where you're going to see things kind of change up a little bit. I did take my Waverly Antique Wax and I distressed each of my pieces. And now I'm going to spell out the word enjoy, putting 1 letter on each of my banner pieces. And that's it. Then I did want to distress these a little bit more, so I took my sanding sponge and I'm lightly sanding over the letters. And then I'm just going to take that Waverly chalk paint and just brush over it, because I didn't want these letters to be so bold. So then I'm just going to distress them a little bit more with that Waverly Antique Wax. I wanted these to kind of look like burnt marshmallows. I know it's not really the right shape, but just kind of that burnt campfire feel. Then to finish this off, I am going to put some Mod Podge over each of my banner pieces to help protect my stickers. And that's it. That was my banner. I thought that this was a cute little touch to my tiered tray because I can't fit a lot on it, so why not tie something in front of it? This came out so cute. For the next DIY, of course, we have to have a gnome. So you're probably wondering how I got all of these gnomes. Honestly, I collected a ton of them in the summer or the spring because I knew that I could use them on a ton of tiered trays in the future. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint his little hat in 2 coats of that light mocha apple barrel paint. Next, I'm going to paint his shirt in that chocolate bar paint. And again, I'm going to give this 2 coats of that. Now, I am taking my time here. I know it's sped up, but I really am. I'm taking my time. I'm doing all of the detail work. I want to make sure that this looks really cute. Then I'm going to take my white Waverly chalk paint and paint his pants with 2 coats of that. I really loved painting this. It was really fun to create this little guy, and I've put a gnome on all of my tiered trays. It's just so fun. So next, I'm going to take that light mocha paint, and I'm going to paint his shoes again with 2 coats of that. Although, if some of the black showed through, I was okay with that because, again, it kind of gave it that bonfire-y, burnt look that I really love for this tiered tray. And like I said, I'm just taking my time, making sure I'm getting in all the grooves and everything. And then I accidentally dipped my brush into the chocolate bar paint. So now I have a combination of chocolate bar and that light mocha. And I actually kind of liked what that created. It was a little happy accident. So I'm just making sure that my shoes are covered and they are painted. And you can tell this is looking like a little s'more gnome already, but we are going to dress him up just a little bit. So after that was done, I took my white paint pen and I am just painting the belt around his little shirt. And I am making sure, like I said, I'm taking my time. I'm just tracing the belt, the back, and the little front with the buckle too. That was kind of hard to get into, but it is what it is. Next, I'm going to take my chocolate bar paint, that chunky brush, and I'm just going to distress his hat. And I am dry brushing over all of these. Then I took some white cotton twine and some regular twine, and I twisted them together. And at first, I hot glued this around the bottom of his hat, which you'll see. And I don't know why I glued this in such a wonky way, but see, I didn't even tie it. I just literally glued it in the back and then cut it off. But then you're going to see that I end up changing him up in just a little bit. So once I had all my glue secure, this little gnome was done for now, and it's time to give him something to hold. So I grabbed one of these skewers and I cut off a little piece where the pointy part is. And then I'm going to take these little colored beads, and these are the square ones. I took a smaller one, I stuck it on my skewer, and it fit perfectly. I didn't really need to hot glue it on there, but you're going to see in a minute that I do, just to give it extra support. And then I just simply went ahead and painted this in 2 coats of that white Waverly chalk paint. We're going to make it look like he's about to roast some marshmallows. So I wanted to make sure that my marshmallow was completely covered. So like I said, I gave it 2 coats. I thought this turned out super adorable. This has got to be probably my favorite thing on the entire tier tray, which you'll see. It's just so cute. And like I said, I've loved putting gnomes on all of my tiered trays. So right here, I'm just going to add some hot glue. Now, I do have a little bit of the point sticking up, so you do want to be careful. And then I took my Waverly Antique Wax and that chunky brush, and I'm just brushing it, and kind of dabbing it. I'm not even brushing it on the top and some of the sides of the marshmallow to make it look like it's burnt. And then I'm simply going to hot glue this at the bottom of his hand, and it really does look like he's holding it. And I did tack it down to his beard as well. But you do just want to hold it there until the glue sets up, and then I'm just adding some extra glue for some support. Then I'm going to distress him a little bit more, and I added some of that chocolate bar paint to the marshmallow. And then I do hit the shoes as well. I don't know if I show it, but I do actually put some on the shoes and then more on the hat. I just really wanted this to be really rustic and really cute. There we go, yeah. Now I'm hitting the shoes and a little bit more on the hat. Now this is when I decide I wanted to add something to his hat. So I cut off this little piece of brown burlap ribbon, and you can see it to the left-hand side at the bottom. I just cut off a little piece, and I'm going to put that now on the brim of his hat, and then I'm going to put the twine on top of it at the bottom of that burlap ribbon. And I did this because I just felt like it needed a little bit more, and it needed something dark up there, and I really love the detail that that added. I think it's super cute. So I'm just reinforcing it with some hot glue. Easy peasy. So fun. Look how cute he is. He's ready for a bonfire. Now I am going to trim up the burlap so it doesn't hang too much underneath the twine, but this little guy is done. Next up, I'm going to take this little flower circle thing. I got it in the floral section, and I'm going to give it a good coat of Waverly chalk paint, but first I am going to fill in that hole with my spackle. So once that spackle dries, I just lightly sand that off. And then I'm going to give this 2 coats of the Waverly chalk paint. Now, real quick, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you are new, I want to thank you so much for choosing to stop by today. And hey, stick around with me for a while by hitting that subscribe button. If you're returning, thank you so much for stopping back by, and I hope you love what you see. I also hope that you're a subscriber too. So after my little disc was dry, I'm just taking this ruler. I put it in the middle of my disc at first. I traced 2 lines, one on the top, one at the bottom of my ruler, and then moved it down with a pencil and then smudged it in with my finger to make it look like shiplap. Then I went ahead and distressed this, although you could probably skip this step because I do end up changing this. This DIY here, it kind of evolved. So you're going to see how I change it up. Next, I took 2 more skewers and then these big block pieces, and this came off of that brain teaser game, and they had these natural color beads and then the dark brown beads. So I just took them off and I'm hot gluing 1 on each skewer. So I am lining it up. I'm holding it next to each other to make sure that the beads are even with each other. And I am reinforcing it with some hot glue. Then once I have them positioned exactly where I want them, I am going to give each of these 2 coats of the Waverly chalk paint in white. I'm going to make sure that these are completely covered because I really want these to be nice and white marshmallows. Well, that is until I burn them by distressing them. So I am getting all of the sides, even the top and the bottom, even though you're not really going to see the bottom, but I'm going to paint that anyways. So then once those are dry, of course, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and that little chunky brush, and look at that. Oh, I just love that. Now, I did go back and forth between using the Waverly Antique Wax and the chocolate bar paint, and I got to say, I like the look of the Antique Wax. It's just like a darker brown, and it's more of the brown color that I was looking for. So I just dabbed this all over my marshmallows to give them that burnt look. You're going to have to let me know in the comments, do you like burnt marshmallows or just a little bit melty? Let me know what kind of marshmallows you like on your s'mores. After that, I took my disc and then I took this little piece of burlap and I'm just tracing a circle around it and cutting it out. Now my goal here is to make the circle my burlap circle a little bit smaller than the disc. So what I'm doing is just kind of cutting it around as I see fit. So I'm just kind of putting it down, testing it, and then cutting it wherever I see that it needs to be a little smaller. So I'm just cutting off my end pieces here. I didn't want a ton to show through around the edges, but just a little bit peeking through. And this is why I said you could probably skip that step. In fact, I would honestly just paint that disc the chocolate brown paint or chocolate bar paint, and you'll see why in a minute. So after I went ahead and got that cut down, I did hot glue it to the middle of my little disc, and now it's time to hot glue my little marshmallows on. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of measuring where I need to cut my stick down. And I'm going to cut them both at the same size. So I'm going to line them up with each other, cut them down, and then I'm going to hot glue them in an X pattern so they are crossed over each other. Now using my miter shears, that really helped cut my dowel rods. Those are going to be linked in the description box below. They come in handy so many times. I really love using them. So if you want a pair, check my description box below and pick you up one of those. So next, after I sanded down the edges, I am going to go ahead and hot glue on my marshmallows down. And I am putting a generous amount of hot glue on the marshmallow itself and then under the stick. And I am holding it there until the glue sets up. I saw this idea on Pinterest and I thought it was adorable. So I thought that I would give it a try myself. I did think that this came out super cute. This is not what I envisioned in my head going into it, but the end result was really, really fun. So now I'm just kind of holding it down, waiting for my glue to set and trimming off some edges and just making it look how I want it to look. And the marshmallow bead did pull up the burlap a little bit, so I'm just reinforcing the burlap down with some hot glue. And then see, you have to put a generous amount of hot glue at that stick at the bottom where it's crossing over the other one because it does pull up. So next, I did feel like this just needed a little bit more. So I'm painting the sides of around the edges of my little disc in that chocolate bar paint. And then you're going to see that I actually paint the front of this as well. So all that white going around, see now I'm going on the front too. I just felt like it needed a little bit more detail. And I needed it to be a little darker. And then you're going to see that I kind of blot it on the burlap as well. And that's why I say just paint the bottom of this in the chocolate bar paint. In hindsight, that's what I would have done. That way these sticks and these marshmallows would have popped even more from this little disc. I do love how this came out. So it wasn't a big deal, but you know, hindsight is 20/20. So now I'm just painting around the perimeter of my little disc. I am trying to make the burlap a little darker. And then that bow that I took off of that little palette sign in the first DIY, I'm just adding a little bit of brown to it just to make it a little darker and highlight it. And then I'm just going to simply hot glue it to where the two skewers meet in the middle. Now I do want this to stand, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hot glue two of my little wooden blocks that I got from the Dollar Tree right onto the back. Now when you do this, you do want to lean it backwards so you can see where you need to glue it. All right, for my next DIY, we are going to make a cute little garland. Now this garland is not going to be long because like I said, my tier tray is very small. So the first thing I'm going to do is put 3 of these little brain teaser pieces on a skewer, and I'm going to paint them all 3 with the Waverly chalk paint in white, and I did do like 2 or 3 coats. Next, I'm going to take 6 16mm beads, and I got these on Amazon. Again, the link is in the description box below if you'd like to get some. And I'm going to paint 3 of them in that chocolate bar paint, and then 3 of them in that light mocha paint. So I did see that it is easier to paint them on a skewer. So what I did was just scooted down the last 3 so that way this doesn't touch the light mocha, but you can see it's pretty easy to do. And then I'm going to dry those and then flip over my beads and then paint the light mocha ones. So that way I didn't waste so many skewers with all these beads. So I'm just going to make sure, I know it's kind of hard to tell here, but I am painting all of them. One did pop off my skewer, that's why I had to go get it. Oh, the things that happen behind the scenes. All right, so after all my beads were dry, I took a piece of twine. I did add some hot glue and kind of twist it to make it a nice point at the end. And then I'm going to add my beads. So I started off with a light mocha, white, chocolate bar, light mocha, white, chocolate bar, and I just did that. Now, I did realize that I needed to paint 2 more of my little white, my square beads, my blocks. So that's what I just did right now. So I'm going to add that, and then I'm just going to continue that pattern until all of my beads are used. Now, for some reason, this twine, you can see, it is so thick here on the end. I actually had to kind of scrape a lot of it off. You can see the left side that I'm working with right here and compare it to the other side of the twine. It is so much thicker, so that's not good when you have to string beads on it, but I did just take my skewer and just kind of push my string through to help it, to help me get the other end. So there we go. I'm just going to push it through and then pull it. And then that completed the beaded part of this garland. So next, what I'm going to do, of course, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make these marshmallows look burnt. So I'm going to take my little chunky brush. I'm going to distress all of my marshmallows. And I did distress all of the sides because no matter how this is laying on my tiered tray, each of my marshmallows will look burnt. So I did go ahead and distress all of it. And again, I'm using my Waverly Antique Wax because I just feel like that coloring is so much better than the chocolate bar. So then after that, it's time to make a tassel. I'm just going to take my twine and I'm going to wrap it several times around 4 of my fingers. I'm going to pull it off, and then I'm going to take one end of my garland and put it through my loop and then tie it on. And I've made several tassels, so if you want a slower version of this, you can check out some of my other tiered tray videos. So after I had that all tied on and I did double knot it, I took that little piece of twine that I cut off and I am tying it to the top of my little tassel to make it actually look like a tassel. There we go. And I am going to double knot that as well. And then I'm going to cut the bottom of my loop to look like individual strands. Then I'm just going to go through and cut off any of my random pieces of twine. And I do actually use hot glue to tack these down because I just want to make sure that it's secure. Now, I do want to make sure that my beads are flush up against my tassel. So what I do is I add some hot glue to the top of my tassel, and then I push my beads all the way down. So I'm going to add some glue, and then you can see I'm pushing my beads down, starting at the one on the other end. That way they are all tightly together. Then I'm going to give this a haircut, make sure all my strands are even at the end. And that side is done for now. For the other side, I'm going to take this little wood chip, and I got this in a pack from Hobby Lobby in the spring. And I'm going to kind of dry brush that chocolate bar paint around the sides of that little wood chip because I just wanted it to be a little darker. And then I'm going to take that light mocha and I'm going to paint the inside of this because these colors, or the natural color of this wood chip, didn't really match what I was doing. So I am going to paint the inside of this with my light mocha paint. And I am making sure not to get any on my sides. Then once that's dry, and it is dry, I know it doesn't look like it, but I'm taking my chalkboard paint that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to make kind of like a very messy circle. You can see that I'm kind of doing wavy lines right in the middle. Now you want to make sure that your paint is smooth. You can see I'm going to take some off because I'm going to write on it, but after that was done, I went ahead and dried it, and then by taking my white paint pen, I'm going to write the word yum. I thought that that would be really cute. There were a lot of sayings I saw when I was kind of hunting Pinterest to get some inspiration. I saw love you s'more, smile s'more, give me s'more. There were a lot of really cute like sayings, but like I said, I couldn't really make anything too big because my tier tray is very small. So I'm just going to go over this one more time, and then just to add a little bit more detail to my wording, I am going to add some lines. Sorry, my dog's barking. And then I'm going to add the stitching around the black part. Once that's done, I'm going to tie a knot, or actually 2 knots, at the end of this side of the garland. That way it keeps my bead in place and it doesn't move. And I am going to tack that down with some hot glue, and then I'm simply just going to hot glue this piece onto my twine. So I'm just going to add a healthy amount of hot glue, and then to give it extra support, I am going to put a piece of duct tape on top of it too. I love how this little beaded garland came out, and it was perfect, the perfect size for my little small tiered tray. So I did go ahead and add a little twine bow to the top of my little wooden disc, and because I just thought it just needed a bow. When in doubt, add a bow, right? So I'm just trimming it down, and then I'm going to hot glue it to the top, and I thought that added a great little detail. And we're almost done with this little garland, but then I just really decided that it needed something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the other side of the tassel and some of that white cotton twine, and I'm going to wrap a piece around that middle part of my tassel. So you're going to see I'm cutting it off, and then I'm just going to wrap and wrap and wrap, and then I'm going to tie it off and then tack it down with some hot glue. This tassel was so easy to make, and it was so much fun. I really did have a lot of fun making this entire tier tray just because I absolutely love s'mores. Let me know if you love s'mores too. Ugh, I just love them. And the more burnt, the better, and the meltier, the better. The messier. I just love them. I can't wait till you see this whole tier tray put together at the end. For my next DIY, I'm going to take one of these mini dice that I got out of that pack that I just showed, and I'm going to cut it in half, or I don't know what I was thinking. I wanted to cut it in half. Clearly you can see it's not, but I'm just going to cut it down the middle. Now, at first I did start off with this big knife, but for some reason it just was not working. So in a little bit, you're going to see that I moved to the smaller knife, the one that you can get in the packs from Dollar Tree, and it was easier for me to cut one end and then for me to turn around and cut down the other end. So I think when you're trying to cut the whole thing, that doesn't work, but if you do it piece by piece, it's better. Next, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm going to give each of these little dice 2 coats of that. while those were drying, I took a plank out of that pack right there, and I'm going to use another dice just to measure how big I need to cut down these pieces. Now, I want these pieces to look like graham crackers, so I am making them a little bigger than the actual dice themselves. Then I'm just going to take that big knife right here. I'm going to score it a few times and until it allows me to bend it back and forth so it snaps. And this was really easy to do. So these packs of wooden planks, you guys, I have been looking for them for probably a year. I mean, they've been out for a really long time. I saw all these YouTubers get them and be able to use them. I have not found them. And then the other day, finally, they had the packs of these squares and then the long rectangles, and I picked up a bunch of each because that was the first time I'd ever seen those in my Dollar Tree. And when I tell you how excited I was, I squealed in the aisle because these so many times could have come in handy for me, and I just never could find them. So I'm so happy I got my hands on these. So after I was able to break off that one part, I did take my scissors and I cut it down, and now I'm really going to sand these down. You don't want them to have any sharp edges or anything. And then I also wanted to round out my corners to make them look a little bit more like graham crackers. Then I'm going to take both of my pieces and I'm going to paint the top and the sides with that light mocha paint. So I did make sure to, now I didn't bother painting the bottom because you're not going to see it, but I did make sure to cover the edges, the sides of each one of these as well. This is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it tells YouTube that you want to see more of my content. So please hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. Next, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax, and this time I'm just going to dab, dab, dab over the graham crackers just to give it that dimension and kind of make it those circles that are in graham crackers, you know? So next, I'm going to take my dried marshmallow, and I'm going to hot glue it. Now, here's the thing. I hot glued it upside down, and I'm going to tell you in a second how to fix it. But after it was hot glued down, I took my chocolate bar paint, and I just squirted it all over the top and then just let it drip naturally. And then I'm going to hot glue on the top. Now, after I hot glued down is when I realized that I hot glued it upside down. So what you want to do is hot glue your marshmallow on the painted part of that plaque of the wood. So here's what I'm going to do. I just took off the top, which, well, right now I'm a little confused and I'm like, what did I do? How do I fix this? So then I decided to take off the top graham cracker. Then I'm just going to wipe it down with a paper towel just to go ahead and get all that paint off of there. And then I'm going to hot glue it. So now it's hot glued on the part that I painted. So that was and now I switched it around. So yeah, I hope that made sense. I know that kind of went fast. All right, so next up, I'm going to take this little glass piece that I got from, or I guess it's ceramic, from the Dollar Tree, and I thought that this was a perfect marshmallow. So the first thing I did was scrape off that little tag with my hairdryer and my scraper. Now, the part that I accidentally cut out was I did give this a coat of Waverly chalk paint in white, and now by taking my black paint marker, I'm drawing on my little face, and then by using my ballet slipper paint, I'm giving her some rosy cheeks. After that, I put her on top of a plate and then just went to town with my chocolate bar paint. And I just let it drip naturally. Now, I did not want it to drip over her face, so I was kind of careful of where I put the long drips. And look how perfect that looked. Like, it dripped perfectly, so it doesn't cover her face at all. So it stopped dripping, I laid it on its side, and then I just added just a few more drips, and I felt like I was giving her bangs, and I did let this dry completely overnight. Then I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to distress the bottoms. I'm really paying attention to the bottom corners, and a little over her face. Like I said, I let it dry overnight. So the next day I came back, I'm making a cute little bow with this gold and burlap ribbon. and it's a very simple bow. So I made it look like one of those awareness ribbons. I scrunched it in the middle and then tied it around with a piece of twine. And you want to make sure to tie it really, really tight. And then I'm just going to simply cut off the ends and then hot glue this to the side of her little head. Oh, I thought that when I saw this sign at the Dollar Tree, I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like a marshmallow. That's kind of what inspired my whole s'mores theme today, because I was like, I gotta make a marshmallow. And then I decided, hey, this would be perfect for my fall DIYs or my fall tray. So there we go. And now my little marshmallow girl is complete. All right, next up, I gotta add some snacks. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I am gonna paint one of these little brain teaser pieces, and I'm gonna paint it in 2 coats of the white chalk paint. And then off to the side, you can see, or right there, you can see that I have this jar, and I did get it from the Dollar Tree. But before I glue my little piece on, I am going to go ahead and cover in the holes, and I'm just using my spackling. Then I realized that I really liked the texture that gave it. Kind of made it look a little fluffy like a marshmallow would be. So I went around all my sides. Then, of course, got to have a burnt marshmallow, so I just distressed the top of my little bead. And then by using my super glue and my hot glue, I'm going to glue that to the middle of my lid. And I just thought that this added such a cute little detail. But you know what comes next? Well, I'm going to reinforce it first with some hot glue. So I'm just putting a bead of hot glue around the bottom. And then I'm going to take my chocolate bar paint and I'm going to squeeze it all over the top and just let it fall naturally. Look how cute. And again, I did let this dry overnight. Now to the lid of my jar, I am just going to wrap twine all the way around my lid. It was easy. You can see that I'm using hot glue a little bit here and there, not really not on the whole thing, but just kind of here and there as I see fit, and then I just wrap and wrap and wrap until I get the whole thing covered with twine. I thought that this made such a cute little addition to my tiered tray, but of course, if you have a snack jar, you got to add to it. So what I did was I took a bowl, I added some Golden Graham cereal, some chocolate chips, and some mini marshmallows. I'm mixing it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and simply put it in that bowl. Now, the one thing I will suggest is I sent my husband to Walmart to go get these things for me, and he picked up mini chocolate chips. I would recommend getting regular size because as you're about to see, they all went to the bottom because they're so little, or once I shake it. So you want to get regular size chocolate chips, but you do want mini marshmallows. So I realized that what I made didn't fill my jar completely, so I'm just adding to it. And let me say this has been a hit on my little s'mores tiered tray. So I'm just giving it a shake, mixing it all up, and look how yummy that looks. All right, for my next DIY, I needed something small to go on to that little s'more that we made because I'm going to use those as risers. So I'm going to make a little sign. So I'm taking a regular size craft stick and I'm cutting out 3 pieces. So they're just really small. And then that mini craft stick, I cut the curved part off, and that's going to be used as my post. So once I had all 3 of my pieces cut down, I am going to take my scissors and kind of make the ends of my wood kind of like, I don't know, like rigid, I guess, like just not straight. I'm just making it look like these were just pieces of wood broken off. Then I decided they were a little too wide, so I did go ahead and cut it in the middle. And now I'm going to cut the ends of this one as well. There we go. And then I'm going to cut that third one. I'm going to do the same thing, cut it in the middle, and then cut the ends. Kind of just make them messy, I guess, or like, I don't know, rigid. I'm sorry if you hear me sniffling. I am not sick, just my allergies are terrible today. I'm so sorry. So next I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and a baby wipe, and I'm just going to rub the wax all over the post of my little sign, and that's that mini craft stick. And then I'm going to take one of my little pieces, I'm going to paint that in light mocha. I'm going to paint the second one in the white Waverly chalk paint and the third one in the chocolate bar paint. So this kind of looks like a graham cracker. After they were dry, I'm going to hot glue my light mocha one to the top, and I am leaving a little bit of that post up top so you can see. Then I'm going to hot glue my white one and then my brown one, and you can see I'm kind of making them angled, not so straight across. Then by using a black marker, I'm going to write s'mores here and then 25 cents. Now, I know you can't really see the 25 cents, but I have a love-hate relationship with my white paint marker, which you'll see in a second. So to make this baby stand, I'm going to take a tumbling tower block, and I'm going to kind of sandwich my post in, although you're going to see that I end up taking the back one off. So here I have them sandwiched. And then next I'm going to take that baby wipe and that antique wax, and I'm going to faux stain my little tumbling tower blocks. And here's where that back one broke off. And then once I realized it could stand on its own without the back one, I just left it off. There we go. See, I'm like, oh, okay then. That's what I'll do. So I just finished faux staining this. Then to add a little touch to the bottom, I took this little mini, oh, nope, I lied. This is what I did first. See, I have a love-hate relationship with this pen. So it either doesn't work or it all comes out at once. So I need to get me some better paint pens. But whatever. So next I took this mini glass jar. I hot glued it to my stand on the one side of it. And then I took some tops of skewers and I'm going to cut them down and put them. Although after that I was like, oh my gosh, toothpicks. You can just put toothpicks and it could be like a legit toothpick holder on your tiered tray. So that's what I ended up doing at the end. After I took all the pictures and everything, because I thought of it after the fact, of course. But that would be a really cute idea too. But I just thought that this was just a cute little mini DIY to throw somewhere on my tiered tray. So next up, this last DIY, I'm going to take 3 tumbling tower blocks. You're going to see I start off with 2, but I do add a third, and I'm going to hot glue them end to end, and then I'm going to give them a really good coat of white Waverly chalk paint. And I am going to make sure to paint all of the sides, and then I'm going to distress it with my Waverly antique wax and my chunky brush, and I'm just going to rub it all over. And I am paying attention to the corners. I want those to be a little darker. And then I just kind of lighten it up and smear it together with my finger. Next, I'm going to take these black letters that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to spell out s'mores bar. But you're going to see right here, I realize I need a third. So again, I grab a third. I'm going to paint that in the white Waverly chalk paint, distress it. And then after that dries, I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my letters. So I thought that this was kind of funny. Now, I did run out of an E. I didn't have any more E's, so I had to take an F. Then I cut off a little part of a Z and added the bottom of my E. But I just kind of thought this was funny because it's like a bar. This actual Jenga thing is like a bar. It made a bar, and then this says s'mores bar. I don't know. And then after I had all my letters on, I realized, duh, I didn't even start it in the middle. So I had to go through and move all of my pieces, all of my letters, so it was more proportional and they were in the middle. So here we go. And of course my S ripped, so I had to replace it with a new one. Now I'm going to take my sanding sponge and I'm lightly going to sand over my letters so they're not so bold and they look a little bit more rustic or worn. And then I do brush over it a little bit with that white paint as well, just to give it a little bit more distressing. And the brown paint too. And now I'm going to hit the top really, really well because I just felt like it needed to be darker around the edges and the sides. So I'm just going to do that. There we go. Now it's really dark, and that's what I was going for. So I just felt like that looked so much better. Now I'm going to take that white paint, brush over, and I am going to use my finger to kind of smear it a little bit. There we go. Then I'm going to add Mod Podge to protect all my letters. To the ends of my little bar, I'm going to take this twine. I'm going to wrap it around, I believe, 2 times, I think. And then I'm going to hot glue it in the back. Now, here's the thing. I do cut off the excess twine, but you're going to want to leave the excess twine or some, like, a tail, sorry, a tail on there because I ended up hanging this onto the handle of my tiered tray. So if you're going to hang it, you're going to need to leave some twine on there. Now I added twine to do that, so it's not a big deal if you don't, but I really thought that added just what it needed. And then I realized that some of my one block was coming off, so I just went ahead and re-glued it. Definitely you could use wood glue for that too. All right, so now that this is complete, it is finally time for my final reveal. Let me know, what do you think? How cute did all of these s'mores DIYs come out? I absolutely love this tiered tray. Nothing screams fall more than these colors and the marshmallows and little golden grahams and chocolate chips. It makes me want to have a s'more. You're going to have to let me know down in the comments if you have a favorite DIY out of this video today, and if you love s'mores, or if you're planning on making a tiered tray like this one. I want to thank Crafted by Corey for hosting this awesome minis challenge today. Please don't forget to visit the description box below so you can check out the playlist and also the link to Crafted by Corey's channel. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you got a ton of inspiration and fun ideas to create something amazing. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Well, until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!